evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. For all the bad things going on, there are, on the other side, Joe Biden's approval ratings, which are a nonstop source of joy for us. And if you've seen them recently, you know in your heart exactly how the November elections are going to turn out. Biden's obviously been a disaster for the country. But not only has he made the U.S. poorer, weaker, and much more ridiculous, people know that he has. And they tell pollsters about it all the time. Biden is the single least popular president in modern American history. At this point, absolutely nobody is impressed by Joe Biden, and that would be including Dr. Jill. So this is a big problem for the Biden family, obviously, but a much bigger problem even for the Democratic Party, which Joe Biden leads. Unpopular presidents drag their parties to the bottom in midterm elections. That's the unchanging rule of politics. You saw it famously in 1994 with the Republican takeover of Congress after 2 disastrous years with Bill Clinton. You saw it in 2006 after Hurricane Katrina. You saw it in 2010 after Obamacare. You saw it in 2018. So there's no question based on precedent that that's about to happen once again in 2022 in November. That's what everybody assumes. And in fact, it may well happen. We're certainly praying for it. But as of tonight, we have to be honest with you. The numbers don't show that happening. Not even close. In fact, all the indications we have right now suggest that despite Joe Biden's well-earned unpopularity, the Democratic Party still, again, as of tonight, has a strong chance of holding Congress in November. The prediction markets, which many believe are more accurate than the polls, overwhelmingly point to the Democrats keeping at least one chamber. And maybe strangest of all, as of this week, Democrats are leading Republicans nationally on the so-called generic ballot by about 4 points. So if you ask people which party do you like more, they say Democrats. And maybe that's why Democrats are raising a lot more money, too. And not just money from their patrons in big tech, but from small dollar donors. That's bad. In June, Democrats raised $64 million online from 4 million people. That same month, this June, Republicans raised only $26 million online from just over 1 million donors. From the first quarter to the second quarter of this year, donations to the Republican Party dropped by more than 12%. By contrast, donations to the Democratic Party are up more than 20%. That is not good at all, not simply because you need money to run a political campaign, but because money is, to some extent, a measure of commitment and intensity. It's entirely possible Mitch McConnell doesn't want to retake the Senate, because then you'd have to run things. And there's one thing Republican leaders dislike, it's running anything. Much easier to complain on Fox News. But if you actually wanted to win, what would you do? Well, here's an idea, just kind of out of nowhere, just spitballing here. How about you run on issues that voters care about? That might work, even for a mediocre candidate. So let's say, again, just for the sake of argument, that you ran a campaign on illegal immigration and crime. Now, these are 2 issues that didn't just arise out of nowhere. They're the product of policies the Democratic Party put in. They were intentional outcomes. We have millions of people coming in illegally, and we have a lot more murders than we had 2 years ago. These 2 issues, immigration and crime, don't simply annoy voters, though they very much do. These 2 issues threaten the existence of our society. So maybe you should run on them. That seems reasonable, but that's not what they're doing. Oh, no. If inflation were the salient issue here, the generational issue of this campaign season, but it's not. Inflation's terrible. It's making people poorer. We actually could tank the U.S. dollar. These are all big, big problems. But changing the population of the United States, allowing people to be murdered in the street, letting drug addicts live on the sidewalk and sending them crack pipes, that will change everything forever. These are offenses against the most basic rules of any civilization. And the most basic of all is you reward people for doing the right thing and you penalize them for doing the wrong thing. If you start doing the opposite, then everything falls apart. And everybody knows that. So why not just say it? Why not just say that? Don't be embarrassed. Just say that. If you live in Texas, for example, a supposedly conservative state, you don't even have police protection anymore. That's how quickly things have changed on the most basic level. That's not some report from a government agency telling you what the inflation rate is. That's your life. You don't have police protection anymore. If there's one reason to run for office, it's to fix things like that. But that's more important than everything else that's going on right now. Law and order. You see it on the streets of our cities. You see it at our southern border. It's collapsed. So if you're a Republican voter, and not just a Republican voter, any voter, you probably want to know, what is the government going to do about the fact that I can call 911 and no one shows up? What are you going to do about the fact that our border is open to the world and that millions of them have come in illegally? How can you take the country seriously when it doesn't even have a border? And it doesn't. And we know that because on video every single day, people stream in. So if every Republican candidate just repeat after me, law enforcement, law and order is not racist. Law and order is a prerequisite for civilization. And if it goes away, so does the country. You would win the votes not simply of your own voters, but of a lot of other voters and people who've never voted before. And any normal Democrat would agree with that because it's inherently true. But it's the opposite of what we have. When Ann Coulter saw the video we just played, she noted correctly that it's easier to get into this country as an illegal alien than it is to return as an American citizen back into JFK. By the way, the people you saw are the ones who just want to be caught. They're turning themselves in so they can get bused to your town. There are a lot of people who don't want to be caught, and those people are bringing in fentanyl, which is killing thousands. These are not the Gnostic Gospels. Every American citizen knows exactly what's happening. And yet the leaders of the Republican Party, Mitch McConnell, will watch footage like that and tell you, the most important issue that we face, territorial integrity of Ukraine. And then in the same breath, will tell you there's nothing the Republican Party can do to avert historic humiliation in the midterm elections. But the truth, as you well know, is that the people who run the Republican Party don't actually want to do anything about it. There are candidates who are talking about this stuff. J.D. Vance in Ohio, Blake Masters in Arizona, Joe Kent in the Pacific Northwest. The leaders of the Republican Party in Washington would rather those guys lose and people like them lose than change the focus of the party to issues that voters actually care about. But the truth is, you can't win elections unless you listen to voters. They're telling you what they want. Republicans have less than 3 months to figure this very simple riddle out